My name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Karina Corrigan from the Peabody Essex Museum. Karina is the Associate Director of Collections, and she also serves as the H.A. Crosby Forbes Curator of Asian Export Art. She's here today to share with us the extraordinary exhibition entitled Saints, Sinners, Lovers, and Fools, 300 Years of Flemish Masterworks, on display at the Peabody Essex Museum until May 4th. During the program, we're finding out why and how the exhibition came about. We'll go on a behind-the-scenes tour, and in the process, come to better understand and appreciate the groundbreaking artistry of Flemish Renaissance painters from the 15th to 17th century. Let's start by meeting Karina and then learning all about Saints, Sinners, Lovers, and Fools, 300 Years of Flemish Masterworks. Welcome. So delighted you're able to be here.
Hi, Jay. I'm so delighted to be with you today.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, I had the wonderful opportunity to visit the exhibition, admired the artwork, learned a lot, eager to find out more and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, I think it would be of interest just to hear a little bit more about your background, professional, academic interest, and what your current position entails, please.
Well, I've been at the Peabody Essex Museum for a long time, 27 years, so I've had lots of different jobs here, but I principally came as a junior curator for Asian export art, and that is something I am still doing 27 years later, constantly learning, which is always the thing I'm most grateful to about my job. But then within the curatorial department, I'm also responsible for focusing on our permanent collection and thinking about ways that we can really celebrate this rich and storied collection, make it more accessible to people. We're in the midst of a major multi-year move to the James B. and Mary Lou Hawks Collection Center in Rowley, Massachusetts. And the collection is vast. And so that's going to take a number of years, but we're really looking forward to welcoming all of you to Rowley to be able to see some of the works that are not always on display in the
No,
museum.
very exciting, very exciting. Moving on to the exhibition, could you provide a little background, like why and how it came about, some of the collaborators, and then how the involvement of the Peabody Essex Museum came about?
Well, we have a large curatorial team here, and we're constantly working on exhibitions, sometimes even, 5, 6 years ahead of time. That are generated here from the Peabody Essex Museum, but we also do take shows from other institutions or partner institutions. And this is an exhibition that was organized by the Denver Art Museum in partnership with the Phoebus Foundation, which is a public benefit foundation based in Antwerp, Belgium. And almost everything in this exhibition at the Peabody Essex is from this remarkable collection in Belgium. We officially we are borrowing this from the Denver Art Museum, but really our principal partners have been these wonderful colleagues in Antwerp who were with us for the installation, will be with us again in May when we deinstall this. The show was previously in Montreal, and it will leave PEM to go to the Royal Ontario Museum, ROM, in Canada, in Toronto.
Wonderful, wonderful. You know, we're very fortunate you've assembled a fantastic set of images to give us an overview of the exhibition. before we even jump right into that, this is an incredible period. This is one of the most outstanding things I learned from the visit and subsequently reading afterwards, is the historical, economic, the social, artistic context in the period is so vibrant and outstanding. Could you just give us a little bit? I think we'll better appreciate your tour after that.
Sure, I'd love to. Flanders is an incredibly exciting place right now. It certainly was an incredibly important place during the time frame that we're covering in this exhibition, the 15th to 17th century. This is essentially the northern part of modern-day Belgium, the region. And during this period, this region was controlled by Habsburg Spain. And so really it was part of a much larger empire. And it was a very complicated time politically. It was also an incredibly vibrant time artistically and culturally. Antwerp is one of the major ports of Europe now, but certainly during this period, and for both the Portuguese and Spanish empires. And so there's a tremendous amount of wealth flowing through this region. We're also seeing the rise of really what I think we could call the world's first art market in Flanders during this period, and that certainly is visible throughout this exhibition. But it was also wonderful music generated, just all kinds of cultural innovation and artistic innovation happening during this period, in part fueled by the economic engine that was Flanders during this period.
Even though the artwork definitely takes center stage in the exhibition, you touch on those other areas in different sections, some of the science and other fields that you mentioned, just to give it that broader context. Well, as I mentioned, have a wonderful selection of images. As you take us through, I know you're going to be highlighting the different sections, the transitions, the transformation over the 300 centuries. Please begin.
Sure. Well, this is just a teaser, and we certainly hope to welcome all of you to the Peabody Essex Museum to see the full show. Jay, can you see that slide now?
It looks wonderful.
Okay, so this is just kind of a teaser image. This is the sort of the first moment that visitors encounter when they come into the exhibition. And I've seen this exhibition in several other of its venues, and normally the show begins with an amazing work of art that is a very large still life. But one of the things I was struck about this show is it's such a diversity of kinds of art, and I really wanted to help highlight that at the very beginning of the show. So this is a reproduction of a painting that visitors see much later in the exhibition of a very self-satisfied young couple in their home with this amazing Kunstkammer filled with all kinds of paintings in many different genre that we'll go through during this tour. We did the show. Typically, a traveling exhibition comes with a structure, but very often our partners allow us to tweak the show for our own audiences. And one of the things that I really was struck by was that I wasn't sure how familiar our visitors would be with Flanders. And I did, as you say, I wanted to really root this in a little bit of history, of political history, of economic history. And so this first section is called This is Flanders. And this is really just trying to introduce that area, a little bit of what we just talked about. And I will say this, initially I was calling this section Welcome to Flanders. And then our wonderful editor said, Karina, the first sentence in your panel says, war ravaged Europe for 300 years. And she said, that's not very welcoming. So anyway, we landed on This is Flanders. But really, as I said, that the Habsburg Emperor is controlling this region for the entire framework of the period that we're talking about. And it was a politically complicated time, partly due to religion and sort of conflicts between Catholics and Protestants. And in an effort to quell some of this revolt, the Habsburg Emperor sent his beloved daughter, excuse me, Isabella Clara here on the right in an amazing painting by Jan van Dyck. And, excuse me, Anthony van Dyck. I have not had enough coffee this morning. And her husband, Archduke Albert, also painted by really one of the leading lights of this period, Rubens. And Clara Isabella and her husband really set up a very powerful court in Brussels. It was politically powerful, but they also used art in really extraordinary ways for sort of multiple purposes. And I think these kinds of monumental, really extraordinary paintings are speaking to their power and the authority that they're bringing to this region. And certainly these are two of wonderful works by kind of the leading Flemish artists of the period. And here you see them in context in the space, and you can particularly see how large that portrait of Clara Isabella is. A number of our visitors have commented on the fact that why is she dressed as a nun if she has a husband? And this is actually a painting done after Archduke Albert's death, when she assumes the habit of the Poor Clares. And yet Van Dyck has made this, very monumental painting of her, and she's standing on an extremely expensive carpet imported from Central Asia. She's got a spectacular damask silk textile behind her. So I think Van Dyck's using art to speak to both her piety and her power, because she is very much still in control of this region, even if she has assumed this habit.
Yeah.
The next major section is actually the largest section in the show, and this is called God is in the Details. And this really explores the role of the Catholic Church during this period. And the church itself was a major patron of the arts, and so we see quite a lot of large-scale altarpieces being commissioned for churches in Flanders. But there also are some wonderful works in this section that were made for personal devotion, that people really commissioned for their own devotion in their homes. And here you see a view of that section with examples of both of these kinds of works. So one of these large-scale altarpieces on the left, and a much smaller altarpiece here in the niche in the center. And I want to just look a little bit more carefully at that. Here's this wonderful small triptych. So this is an altarpiece that opens and closes. And I really loved thinking about all of these triptychs as a form of kinetic sculpture during this period, because the way that you're interacting with them is constantly changing as you're opening and closing. This would have been for a Benedictine monk, probably the man that you're seeing here on the right, for his own devotion. And what we're looking at is St. Luke painting the Virgin and Christ. And during this period, people regarded St. Luke's portrait of the Madonna and Jesus as the world's first portrait. Obviously, that's not true, but certainly he was the patron saint of painters. And so this was certainly a very appropriate subject for this Benedictine monk's devotion. One of the things we often try to do at the Peabody Essex Museum is incorporate interactives to allow our visitors to go more deeply into works. And obviously we can't have people touching the works themselves, but what we've done is made a reproduction of this altarpiece that's behind it, and we've allowed visitors to experience that kinetic sculpture. by opening and closing it. And you'll see here a reproduction of the skull and bone that is on the outside of that portable
Yeah,
altarpiece.
that was a wonderful opportunity as a visitor, as are several of the little videos that you have throughout that give wonderful background information about some of the craftsmanship taking place. Always appreciate that about the exhibitions at the Peabody is the opportunity to experience beyond the viewing, and you definitely achieve that with this exhibition with examples like you just explained.
We have an amazing team here. We work very collaboratively on exhibitions, and I'm so grateful to my partners who made all of these things possible, because I do think it makes you look differently at the original works themselves. As I mentioned, there are a number of works for personal devotion, and this incredibly beautiful illuminated manuscript is in a section near one of those videos. And I
Mm.
think it's important to remember that literacy was limited during this period, and so obviously the person who owned this book both was literate and had the money to spend to commission this for themselves. But a lot of these large scale works of art are really meant as illustrations for people who could not read, to help them learn the stories from the Christian Bible. Pem's collection does not include a lot of Flemish art, but this work is in our collection, and we were able to incorporate it into the installation. This is a rosary terminal bead that's been in the collection since 1806,
Wow.
and really is a Flemish work of art from this period that is on par with anything in the Phoebus Foundation's collections in this show. So we're thrilled to be able to highlight this. Once St. Sinners closes, this will go down to the basement to rest for a little bit, and then it will come back up at the end of the year for our new installation in East India Marine Hall, which is the foundational building here at the Peabody Essex Museum, because this object has been in the collection for so long and really was a star from the very beginning. So stay tuned for that later this year. Really spectacular painting by Hans Memling. I particularly love these wonderful passages of paint with her robes, these incredibly beautiful robes. I also want to point out the landscape in the background, because that has a significance for what we're gonna talk about next. But really a really spectacular work. Look at the unbelievable the color on those
Mm.
angels' wings. I always feel, though, I don't love looking at the baby Jesus. I feel like he's exposed and we should be, wrapping him up in a swaddling cloth here. So a little bit odd there. But this next section, called New Perspectives, is really looking at the kinds of both new genres and new technologies that are happening during this period. So when we saw that Memling, there is this landscape in the background. Very often in these religious scenes, we have a vase with flowers in the foreground. So there are still lifes and landscapes in these early religious works. But what's exciting and happening in many ways for the first time in Flanders at the very beginning of the 17th century is the rise of totally new genres. So we're seeing landscape painting in its own right emerging, or still life painting. And here are two wonderful examples from this section and a view of that section
Mm.
uh, with
Wonderful.
um, with this very fun windmill. Danielle Cavada-Riva was my design partner on this, and she integrated all of these wonderful architectural elements
Yeah,
throughout the show.
fabulous.
Um, in this section, the other thing I maybe say about new technologies here is that What we're also seeing is the rise of a new kind of painting. Up until this point, most artists were painting in egg tempera, which dried very quickly. And during this period, artists start suspending pigment in linseed oil. It's really the invention of oil painting. And what that's allowing artists to do is to layer pigments. And I think some of the luminosity, the richness and vibrancy and immediacy of these compositions is coming from that new technology. So that's something we try to think about. One of the really exciting things about this show is that we have 4 named female artists represented here from the Phoebus Foundation's collections. And as you can imagine, women artists and known women artists are very rare during this period. Very often they're coming from families of painters. And so here are, this is the Clara Pater's still life from this section, but here are 4 works by named female artists in the show. The next section, portrait mode, is not necessarily a new genre of painting because we know that portraiture is happening long before this time. But I think what's new, what's innovative, is who's having their portraits painted. And so up until this point, we have, Archduke Albert is the kind of person who's having his portrait painted. But with this, the rise of an upper middle class and the economic affluence that's happening here, we're seeing more and more people who are not noble opt to have their portraits done. So here are 2 of the kinds of people who previously had their portraits done. The son of the King of France and Margaret of Parma, who was another one of these sort of de facto rulers for the Habsburg Emperor in this area. But then what we're seeing are things like this painting by Jan van Hemesen. Sadly, we don't know the name of this couple, but we think that they are prosperous burgher couple, and maybe even a wedding portrait that they've commissioned for themselves. Excuse me. Excuse me. And then another painting in this section I really love is Jan Kossier's self-portrait. And here, this also speaks to the rise of the art market. So here, in many respects, I think this is an artist who's advertising his skills with his portrait of himself. So he's holding his palette and his brush, and he's turning to the visitor as if he's in the middle of his work. And yet, what I love is look at the incredibly expensive clothing he's wearing while he's painting. This yellow silk and velvet sleeve peeking out, which I don't actually think is what he normally would have been painting in. Too messy to be wearing such expensive clothes. But he's really saying in his portrait, this is how I can paint you, and won't you look fantastic? And
Exactly.
and like you have all kinds of expensive clothing.
Karina, for the sake of time,
Oh,
there's so
sorry.
much to cover. No, it's so fascinating. In the 5 minutes or so left, I just want to make sure you highlight anything in particular that you'd like to bring to our attention, because this has been more than a great tease, but
yes, too much of a tease.
No, it's fabulous. We're going to be jamming the parking lot near the Peabody soon.
Well, here is another Rubens, and this is the largest painting in the show, made for the King of Spain's hunting lodge. And I just wanted to share the team that spent 2 weeks installing this exhibition, both our own team and contractors and visitors from Antwerp. And then really talk just a little bit about this last section of the show, the Pursuit of Wonder, that's really thinking about how people in Flanders are increasing their awareness of the world, the reach. This is a period of global exploration. And what we're also seeing are people bringing the world into their own homes, the world in microcosm, with these cabinets of wonder. Here. And then what we've done is try to recreate a cabinet of wonder in this show. And I, as a curator of Asian export art, I could not resist including all kinds of wonderful things from Pem's collections. So we've included 60 works from Pem's own collection, a lot of Chinese porcelain, Japanese lacquer, but also amazing things from our natural history collection, all kinds of birds and shells. And you may be able to see in the background this 8-foot high ostrich.
It's
Um,
amazing. It's
which is
amazing.
so that's been really fun to be able to augment this spectacular show with works from our own collection.
Now, it's a fabulous way to end the exhibition. It's like it builds and builds and builds, and then you have this incredible creation that you and your staff have put together. Just fascinating. And you have a wonderful guide that helps us through the different artifacts and specimens, as well as some accompanying catalogs and guidebooks to get even more information. No, it just makes you wanting even more, or definitely finding out more about this period as you exit. And I know in addition to the exhibition, you've already had, and perhaps there's other programming, a fabulous catalog and a book connected to the exhibition. In the couple of minutes left, if you have a few comments about those areas.
Sure. Well, there's a massive and wonderful catalog written by Dr. Katarina van Koteren, who is the executive director of the Phoebus Foundation, but then also these wonderful little guides to individual works of art that are really fun. I'm so glad you used the guide to the Wunderkammer. That was very much a group effort, and we wanted to not have labels on this section so that we could kind of evoke the 17th century experience. So the show is up for another 2 months. It's a slightly longer run for us, which is great. And so we're really looking forward to welcoming people to see the show. Thank you so much for letting me come to talk.
Oh, it's been our pleasure indeed. And, speaking about some of the wall detailed information, as is the case with all the exhibitions at the Peabody, just a wonderful job of balancing some good information background, some of the points that you've made in your presentation today without overwhelming the artwork and making the artwork centerpiece of the viewing experience, but enough background to better appreciate it. So always enjoy that aspect of the exhibitions at the Peabody. And yeah, just have to say, can't say enough about having people make their way and enjoy it over these next couple months. Looking forward to going back before it ends on May 4th. But Karina, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. I want to thank you again so much for being here. Congratulations to you and your colleagues on this incredible exhibition. Look forward to future productions by you and the staff.
Thanks so much, Jay.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.